Your voice, your opinion, your community. Fact TV, free speech protected.
Secrets in the shallows, lost and found. Truth in every echo, loud and clear. Keep on with the long road, no more fear. In the halls of power, whispers grow. Every secret got beneath the undertone. Honest stories hidden in the glass. On this long road, in the truth we trust.
Welcome to The Long Road. I'm your host, Chris Roberts. And today we're going to talk about debt. Not personal debt, government debt. Why are we going to talk about government debt? Because with all the stuff that's going on in the news with Doge or this or that, okay, we're all going to pay for that debt. In most cases, you're going to pay more money every time you go to the grocery store, every time you pay your electric bill, every time you want to buy a new car, you want to take out a loan. Why? Because I can loan money to you, or I can loan money to the federal government. Or I can play some tricks with the government debt and borrow money off that debt and then loan it to you or put it on your credit card at 28, 29, 30% interest. So you're going to pay. We're all going to pay. If we think that we're not going to pay, then we're really naive. Okay? And today, I'm going to do a little bit of myth shattering. I talked last week about how the great conservative savior, the one who saved the country with his conservative values and conservative outlook on government, reducing government size, reducing government taxes, the whole works. Ronald Reagan. Well, I'm going to show you some stuff today that might change your opinion of Ronald Reagan and how his fiscal responsibility was, how he wanted to shrink government, how he wanted to shrink government spending. Because here's one of the things. Overall, American education system really sucks. They don't teach us economics. They don't teach us real history. They decide who we're going to make a hero out of, and then we teach that about that person, and we eliminate any blights that might be on that individual. Every individual has black marks on them. Every individual has done stuff that, well, let's say, no, there's some psychopaths and everything. Almost every single individual, 99.99, have done stuff that we didn't feel good about, that we wish we had never done. But we don't talk about that with our leaders. We're in a cult that we worship people. We worship basketball players, football players. We have millions of people who worship Taylor Swift. They can't wait to go out and buy her song or buy the same clothes or wear the same clothes Taylor Swift has had or do her haircut. We do it. Look at that. The Kardashians. Millions of people worship the Kardashians. And what have they contributed to the betterment of the country? Nothing. That's what we've done. We've worshiped people like that. And we don't want to really educate our individuals. Look at our reading. I had talked about our ability, our reading levels. And we've got to the point is we teach people, know what? You don't have to go in and find out, get more information by yourself. Just listen to me. Whether it's CNN or Fox or NBC, CBS, or whatever, Newsmax, every single one of those people are hired actors to feed you what you want to hear or to feed you red meat, to get you excited, to get you agitated. And of course, to make money by selling advertising. Hey, you want to get rid of your timeshare? Hey, you want to go and get money for your business? Hey, if you want to get survivalist food, hey, no problem at all. We can sell you. And stop and think. We're in the age of the internet, whether it's Google or Bing or dozens of other search engines out there. We're lazy. We don't want to find out for ourselves. We don't want to question for ourselves. A lot of us want to be conformists. We listen to people that we really know actions are going to screw us over. But we go, they must have had a justifiable reason. No. Why would they have a justifiable reason if it's detrimental to me, my family, my friends, my community, but it's beneficial to them? I just don't understand. We got to be informational searchers. We got to start asking questions. Okay, none of this stuff, well, it was the Republicans. The Republicans are trying to screw us over. The Republicans are always worried about the wealthy. Well, I'm looking, and there's a lot of times the Democrats were just right there along. And so, over the past couple of years, it's one side benefits or the other side, so they don't want to work together. But let's start off with something that you won't find in the history books. Even if you're in college and you major in history or you major in economics, the chances of you finding out what I'm going to give you in a couple of paragraphs are pretty slim. Maybe if the teacher gave you a research paper, or maybe you were getting a master's degree or a PhD and you had to write a thesis and really have to go. But otherwise, people are not going to tell you. Teachers are not going to tell you. In 1946, the World War II officially ended December 31st, 1946. People think it ended in 45, but we had occupation forces in Germany, Austria, Japan. So, and there were still people getting shot at and stuff. So that was the official date. So In 1946, the 1946 budget, the federal debt was 106% of GDP. So put in other words, for every dollar that the Americans produced, we had $106 in debt. And so when that happens is, you can never catch up. So look at it this way. I make $100 this week, I spend 106. Make $100 next week, spend 106. So I can start out with bingo. I get a job. I got no debt. I get a job, pay $100. I go and spend 106. After the first month, I'm $6 in debt. Next month, I'm $12 in debt. Next month, I'm $18 in debt. But I'm working. I want a bigger house. I don't want a small apartment. I want a big TV, but I don't want a small TV. I want a $300 cell phone plan, a $250 internet TV plan. You know, everybody else gets them, so I want them. So, bingo goes deeper and deeper and deeper in debt. But here's the big part. From President Truman in 1946 to the end of Jimmy Carter's presidency, the United States debt compared to GDP, gross domestic product, dropped down to 25 cents. What do you mean 25 cents? Yes. So, for every $100 I was making, I only had $25 in expenses. And I had $75 over. Oh, I can start using some of that money to put into savings. And so later on, when I have enough money and I go buy it, I don't have to pay interest. Also, I can use that extra money to pay down that debt. But you go, hey, Mr. Roberts, you can't be right. And you go, well, what do you mean? He goes, but the debt was going up every year. So we had to be spending more money than we were bringing in. So you were wrong. Am I? Yes, the federal government ran deficits in 26 of those 34 years. The debt ratio declined for two reasons. The government ran a primary or non-interest surplus in a large majority of those years. You go, what does that mean? No one ever talked to me about that in school. Okay, I now have, you look at it, you got the budget for this year, okay? And you got the debt, okay? So, if I don't consider interest payments, the government brought in more money than it spent I'm running the government. You go, what? Yeah, for example, government brings in $1,000 and the government says, wait a minute, we are only going to spend $950. So basically, wait a minute, I'm not adding more. I'm not spending above my needs. I'm going, wait a minute, I got $1,000 and I can't, nope, I'm not going to spend any more. But what happens is interest rates go up and down. And so, give you an example, like 1982. No, that's after that one. So, you got the debt. And each year the government has to resell the bonds to help pay for the debt. So sometimes the interest rate would go up 6%, 8%. Sometimes it would go down 3%. So for most of those years, the only reason the federal government was running debt, was due to interest payments, increased interest payments. Put it in relationship. For example, last year, we'll round it off, the federal government spent $2 trillion, had $2 trillion in debt. But the federal government had $1 trillion rounded off in interest payments. But the federal government didn't have money to pay those interest payments. You go, what? Yeah. So the federal government had to pay $1 trillion in interest. But the government spent an extra $1 trillion that it didn't have. So the government had to add $1 trillion more onto that interest, that debt. And so they're going to be paying interest on another $1 trillion. And what happened, they said, oh yeah, well, for a long time, the government was paying hardly nothing on its interest, but now they got to pay because as you have more and more debt, people want more and more money. So while the government was spending less than they were bringing in minus the interest payments, the gross domestic product was growing. And you go, that doesn't really make sense. It really makes sense if you study economics. Because if, for example, you take out the interest payments, because, for example, a lot of the interest payments were bought by foreign countries who would buy government bonds. And so they were taking that money, buying the government bonds. So we could say Japan and Germany or Great Britain were buying our bonds, putting money into the U.S. economy, and the Treasury wasn't sucking more money out of us. So we had more money to spend. So if you look back in history, what happened between 1946 and 1980? Wow. The American middle class boomed. They grew. Home ownership was going up. People were going to college. People were buying cars. They were unions. They had health care. They were pensions. They were putting all this stuff away because the government wasn't sucking so much money out of them. And so this means not count interest payments, the budget was in surplus. Second, the economic growth exceeded the Treasury's interest rate in a large majority of those years. These two factors, along with the starting debt ratio, are the levers that control debt ratio sustainability. Okay, giving an example, what they're saying right here, if the Treasury is selling bonds at 2%, but economic growth is at 4%, money's coming in. That allows us to pay down the debt. Okay? Now compare it today. The government sells a 10-year bond at 4.5%. Okay? But economic growth is only 2.5%. So that's money that's extracted out. That's extracted out of the Americans' buying power because the government is taking your money. Well, guess what? That all changed on January 2nd, 1981, when Ronald Reagan became president of the United States. Ronald Reagan and his crew basically wanted to stop the devil. Basically, they wanted to end a lot of the government programs, and they felt if they took a lot out, they said, hey, let's give money back to the people, then there wouldn't be enough money and we'll starve the devil. Perfect way to shrink the size of government, shrink debt, all the stuff. Well, like I was talking about last week, the nation's fiscal picture changed in 1981 when Ronald Reagan enacted the largest tax cut in American history. Okay? What did that do? In 2023 dollars, okay, it was the equivalent of reducing $19 trillion in government revenue. 19 trillion. Okay? Over 10 years. Between 1981 and 1991, Ronald Reagan helped reduce government revenue by $19 trillion. Congress raised taxes in a number of those years and clawed back close to half the revenue. So Congress, by raising taxes and stuff like that, were able to get $9 trillion back. So all done, after all was done with Ronald Reagan's tax cuts, the United States lost the equivalent of $10 trillion in revenue. Then, because of these cuts, for about 10 years after, you had Papa Bush, who said, read my lips. no tax increases. He got in and he goes, holy crap, man, we're in deep doo-doo. So what did he do? He did the proper thing to do, and he says, you know what? We can't cut taxes. In fact, we have to raise taxes. Congress passed some laws that says, hey, if you want to spend $100 billion, you got to have a combination of $100 million, whether it's in tax increases or program cuts someplace else. And it kept going. Okay. Then Bill Clinton became president of the United States. And yes, he did some tax increases. Yes, he cut a lot of welfare programs, saying, hey, you're not going to be on welfare for your whole life. We're going to put a limit of 5 years. And they did a bunch of things. And so by the end of Bill Clinton's second term in office, the federal government was running surpluses. And dumping back, before Social Security and Medicare were separate off-budget items. And how do you solve, things looking really bad? It's like, wait a minute. Social Security has this big surplus and it's running a surplus every year. Let's put Social Security in the budget. So we'll put Social Security in the budget. Social Security spending $300 billion, but Social Security is bringing in $600 billion. Oh, a budget deficit isn't that bad. Okay? Well, now Social Security is just about even, and it's about to go down in the tubes because it's not bringing up. Because of Clinton-era's policy, having at the very least a primary surplus and a declining debt ratio was predicted to persist indefinitely, and even the Federal Reserve, Alan Greenspan, knew at the current rate, the United States was going to be debt-free in 8 to 10 years. And matter of fact, the United States was doing so good, they stopped selling 30-year treasuries. Hey, why do we sell 30-year? We're going to go in here debt-free, and we don't need 30-year debt. We're only going to do 5 and 10s because we're going to pay it off. But guess what happened? Alan Greenspan, the head of the Treasury, the Federal Reserve, goes, wait a minute. What are we going to do if the United States has no debt? How are the banks and stock market and other places supposed to make money? So Alan Greenspan changed his mind and says, yes, I will support Baby Bush's proposed tax cuts. I think it will be good for the country. America cannot go debt-free. Okay? But they really, really wanted to go all out. But there was a senator from Vermont, a Republican senator from Vermont, who earned the Profile and Courage. This guy deserved the Profile and Courage award, Senator Jeffries. He refused to vote for the Bush tax cuts the way they were until they were cut. So, as the Congressional Budget Office can only look 10 years out, and so they proposed these tax cuts to last for like 8 years, so it won't be that expensive. Well, that was really good. And so, except, the second term, as we're getting ready to rule on these, let's make these tax cuts permanent. Okay. So what did these tax cuts do? And so we're expecting to have all kinds of revenue coming in, but it didn't happen. You know, we had the problem of the Great Recession, 2007. By the end of fiscal year 2023, George Bush's tax cuts only cost the government $8 trillion. Okay? The tax cuts lowered personal income tax across the board for labor and capital, all the things. Yes, people got a little bit, but the wealthy started getting really, really wealthy. Then the Trump tax cuts came in 2017. Hey, no big deal. It's only going to be for a short period of time. And in the first year, the Trump's tax cuts cost over $1 trillion. And in 4 years, under President Trump, the deficit was over $7 trillion. Well, Obama was up there pretty high himself. Then COVID came in. For some reason, both Trump and Biden said, let's throw money over and over and over in. Again, a couple of Profile and Courage awards should go out to the senator from West Virginia and the senator from Arizona. Build Back America, Inflation Reduction Act, all this other kind of stuff. Both of them said, no, we're not going to do it. We're not going to add another $1.5 trillion in. So, between Mr. Trump and between Mr. Biden, $14 to $15 trillion in debt. And so you take President Reagan's and you take baby Bush's and you throw in Obama. Those 5 individuals, and also you can throw in which costs different people go between veterans costs and war costs and all this kind of stuff. 20 years of war, global war and terrorists, 20 years in Afghanistan, going into Iraq when Saddam Hussein had nothing to do with us, going into Saudi Arabia, ticking off some guy as Saddam bin Laden. We kept going, and that cost us about $9 trillion. Okay, and now Mr. Trump wants to make his tax cuts permanent. The tax cuts that are supposed to run out this year. And how is that going to do it? Oh, that's to add another $4.5 to $5 trillion over the next 10 years. But since they're going to be permanent, if no one does anything to it, it keeps going farther and farther. And again, we have our wealthy are getting bigger, wealthier and wealthier and wealthier. We're producing multi-billionaires. How the heck does Elon Musk get $300-400 billion? Other guys, $200 billion, $100 billion. You know, let's look at Elon Musk's money. Let's put that in perspective. Okay. He has enough money to fund the government of New Hampshire's budget for the next 30 years. One man, one person has enough money to fund the New Hampshire state budget for the next 30 years. And he owns Tesla, most of our stock. About to checking in what his percentage is that he pays in taxes. Because under the new, with these tax cuts, and people say, well, you know, these really wealthy people and everything, small wealthy people, they pay for about 50% of the taxes that the federal government collects. Okay? But if someone is paying, like Warren Buffett goes and says, well, I pay with all the tax breaks and loopholes and good tax account, I may be 12 to 14% of my income for the year, I'll pay. So if I make $100 million this year, yeah, I'll pay $14 million. But my secretary, if she makes $100,000 a year, she may pay 18 to 22% in taxes. Yeah, she may only pay 18 to 22,000 compared to my 14 million, but she, on a percentage-wise, is paying much more taxes than Warren Buffett, her boss. And and we're talking about $1 trillion. Okay. Congress is working, especially the House, they only got about 2 weeks to come up with a budget resolution to pay for the rest of the budget. Okay. So right now, this is the what they're working going in under this new plan. What President Trump is pushing, that they'll be limited to $4 trillion in new debt. So we have 36 trillion, but we're going to allow the debt to go to 40 trillion. Okay. So for the next 9 years, the Ways and Means will have $4.5 trillion to spend. It's amazing that $4.5 trillion is about the amount of money that's in Donald Trump's tax cut, making his tax cut permanent. He will give another $110 billion additional to the judiciary. You know, where people are going to swear loyalty to the President of the United States instead of to the Constitution of the United States. I don't want anybody that's going to question me. I don't want anybody that was doing the job they were told to do. They all got to be gone. The armed forces, yep, we want to give the military another $100 billion. And Homeland Security, we got to get rid of all those illegals, those criminals. Even thought we're getting rid of them at a lower rate than Obama and Biden did. We want to give them $90 billion extra. That's in the reconciliation budget they're going. That's the guidelines that they're giving, and to have that fall in. Okay? But now, it says, well, we got to find a way to cut money. So this is what they're proposing. Cut money. Energy and commerce. $880 billion over the next 9 years. Almost $1 trillion. Well, energy and commerce. You know, the United States has a really bad energy grid. Its electric grid is really bad. It's old. It's failing. In commerce, we want to eliminate a lot of restrictions on businesses, whether it's going to be trucking, train, plane, all this stuff. We want to do a lot of restrictions that are preventing us from maximizing our profits. $330 billion out of education in the workforce. Hey, your company closes down, you're out of business, you're screwed. No longer are we going to give you money to retrain so you can get another job. That's your problem. Education? Yeah, we're spending too much money on special ed, special needs. We're spending too much on Title I. You know, those neighborhoods where they have people of color. We got to be best people possible. We'll get jobs, no DEI or any of that kind of stuff. And so why would we put Title I into kids who can't compete the way they are? Okay? Colleges, we don't need to send as many kids to college because colleges are accepting people that shouldn't be in there. And colleges accepting brown, black, red, yellow people to increase their diversity. And so we know the code words when the college says we want to increase our diversity is meaning we just want to increase the number of people who are not best qualified to go to the school. And because we're bringing these not best enough qualified, we're preventing better qualified, more qualified people from attending that school. Okay? Agriculture. $230 billion in agriculture. Wow, $230 billion going less to farmers and stuff. Nope. Let's look at it this way. Guess where SNAP program, food stamps, school lunchers, guess what that falls under? Agriculture. And so by reducing the amount that goes to agriculture, we can reduce the amount to that goes into SNAP or whatever, and then we can have our farmers sell that overseas so we can bring more money into the United States. Transportation and infrastructure. $10 billion. We don't need safety on highways. We don't need highway improvement. Even thought the, can't remember, the National Society of Engineers have basically said the United States is infrastructure, bridges, and things like that, at best rates a D, D minus, in some place in F. Financial services, $1 billion. You know, we're sick and tired of the SEC and other ones investigating inside trading or some of the crypto and all this other kind of stuff. So we're going to take $1 trillion out of their budget over the next 9 years. So we're going to reduce their budget in constant dollars by $110 million a year. Okay, natural resources. We're going to reduce them by $1 billion. Again, about $100 million a year, because we want to pump, baby. We want to flood the market and reduce oil prices way down. That's really good. We want to get the price of oil down to 50%. Pump, baby, pump. $50 a barrel. Well, we're producing a lot of oil out of shade. Shade, I'm pronouncing the word shall, because the price of oil is over $70. If it goes to $50, these people do not produce oil by pumping water into the ground, which forces the oil up, because it's not profitable. If we pump a lot of oil, Saudi and OPEC says, oh, they've already said, you know what? We're extending our cuts for another 3 months. We do not want the price of oil to drop. So we're not going to produce oil. That's a circular firing squad. Okay. So they're saying that's $1.5 trillion in deficit deductions. And they're going to look for another to bring it up 1.7 to bring it up to 3.3 trillion. And they say, hey, if we reduce this, then we'll be able to take about $700 billion off the interest over the next 9 years. We're going to pay $700 billion less. But these are all projected numbers. And so do you know right now, because I got to get short on time, I got about 10 minutes, is between the federal government and the state governments and corporations and individuals, credit cards, student loans, auto loans, mortgages, we, the American people, are only $101 trillion in debt. $101 trillion in debt. Between 2007 and 2024, the average real GDP rose 1.9% a year. 1.9. So if I have $100, so I round it up to, I now get $102. But I have $100 in debt, and it's going up 4.5%. So 102, 104.5, 204, 209. It ain't gonna work. It isn't like 1946 to 1980. So, where did I get? Oh yeah, there's a rumor. I don't think it's a rumor. It's X or whatever. I'm pretty sure it's sarcasm. Where Elon Musk is saying, "Hey, I want to give every American a check for $5,000 for the money we've saved under Dodge, all this waste and stuff that we've." But you know what? There's 330 million Americans. Yes, say only 200 million are taxpayers and everything. Oh, that's $1 trillion. The federal government is just going to write a check for $1 trillion. And what is that money coming from? Oh, that's coming from money that you're going to save? Wait a minute. If I'm going to save $1 trillion because of fraud, waste, abuse, all this stuff, and I turn around and write a check for $1 trillion, how much did I save? How much did the debt deficit and debt decrease? It didn't. Dave Stockman, the budget director under Ronald Reagan, who thought he was going to do a bunch of things, ended up quitting. And he's kind of saw the light, and he's working on the other side and saying, you know what? We didn't do a good job at all. This is to give you an example of what $2 trillion is. $2 trillion. Our debt deficit this year, in the first 4 months of this year, our deficit is $885 billion. $885 billion. If that was to continue, just think of it. $2.6 trillion would be added on to the debt. Okay? How do we get David Stockton? Again, he's sarcastic because he helped cause the problem. And I think he's trying to help correct it. But to put it in perspective, cut $2 trillion. So if we cut $2 trillion this year, what do we have to do? We would need to embrace a strict libertarian policy menu calling for, and libertarians, They want to be totally responsible for themselves, but hey, they don't want to pay Social Security tax, but they have no problem collecting Social Security when they turn 65 or Medicaid, Medicare, a whole bunch of other things. But, but hey, we don't want this, but yeah, I want safe medicine. So to save $2 trillion, all you would have to do is eliminate 16 agencies entirely. Completely wipe them out. Okay, here's what would be wiped out. Get rid of the FBI. Get rid of the Education Department. President's working on that. Get rid of USAID. They looks like they're getting that. Get rid of the National Endowment for Arts. He's taking over the Kennedy Center. Humanity and Democracy. Then shrink 9 other departments by 50%. The EPA, who cares about, Love Canal, who cares about poisonous and forever chemicals? The FAA, who cares about what happens? Oh, guess what? There was another crash on the one-way today out west, killing 2 people. 2 planes hit each other. NASA, we don't have to go out of space. Elon Musk and Barrows will take care of it. The IRS, we don't have to worry about taking taxes. And why should we go after the billionaire? Trim the rest of the non-defense agencies by 34%, reducing the 1.5 million staff at the VA. Get rid of about 350,000 people who work for the VA. Same thing for Homeland Security, Social Security, the Justice and Department, among others. So that would be, and others by about 360,000. I would recommend bringing the Empire home and shrinking the Army and Navy upward to by 50%, therefore generating $500 billion per year in deficit reduction. In short, I do not see any route by which Trump's second term at bat will generate anything less than $30 trillion of added debt over the next decade, and that would be an outright calamity. So when I started by saying we're all going to pay a price, we're going to lose benefits, we're going to lose services, we're going to lose protection, we're going to pay more. They want to dump people from Medicaid. They want to reduce food stamps. They want to reduce free and reduced lunch. They want to reduce special education. They want to reduce housing. All those things, they all come at a cost. They want to give the wealthy more tax breaks. It would be different if the wealthy reinvested that money into the economy. But they're hoarding that money. If they go and buy a $200 million yacht and they get it built overseas, how does it help us? I don't know. And so all I can say is, you know what? You better not go out and make big purchases because you don't know what the future holds. A lot of things are going to be cut. They have to be cut. There's been a lot of breaks for a small group of people. It kind of goes, what I've been saying is the way the government is going, there is no middle class. You can say you're middle class because it makes you feel good. For most people, they'll be lucky if they're still in the working class. Paycheck to paycheck to paycheck. You better not get sick. You better not have a major emergency, car breakdown. And so I just want you to think. I want you to Google it. I want you to go online. I want you to search. I want you to say, holy crap, I did not realize this. Don't hate someone for being a Democrat. Don't hate someone for being a Republican or independent, because we're all going to lose out. For the next 4 years and even on, there are going to be major reductions. It's not going to be like it has been for the last 20 years with the federal government reducing the amount of money that comes in, spending a lot of money, and the benefit and the stuff is not going to be there. So I know I'm pretty much, I forgot about the timer. So that's it for today. And again, open your eyes and ask questions. Search for information.
Your voice, your opinion, your community. Fact TV, free speech protected.